There we go. Okay, so today we're going to cover Report Composer. Uh, Clearly, the single biggest request we get almost all the time when it comes to the report center is, how do I make a report that doesn't already exist? And of all those reports, the other biggest request we get is to produce a custom scoreboard. This would be a case where, they don't want to use the portal, they don't want to use the built-in leaderboards, and so they want to create their own in order to be able to put it on a board outside or in the window of the pro shop and hand mark the scores in. And we still have at least half, if not more, of the clubs that are going to use manual or paper scoreboards. So I'm going to make a paper scoreboard today, and it'll show you, while we do this, all the little tricks and items that you have within Report Composer in order to build reports the way you want to see them. So let's look at I'm going to share here the event that I've made. And what you're seeing now is there we go. And good. What you're seeing now is the uh, dashboard of the event I've created. So all I've done is created a simple event. You can see here it's got 48 players in it. If I go to golfers, there's our 48 players. And in this particular event, I've gone down to divisions here, event divisions, flights, and teams. And you'll see that I've broken our 48 golfers in the all golfers division into 3 other divisions. The men's amateur division, which has 17 golfers, the senior amateur, which has 22, and the women's amateur division that has 9. So we're going to work with divisions here to show you how you can sort and filter these reports as well, to show you just what you want. Next up is, it's going to take place, it's scheduled for October 21, 22, and 23. I've got 3 rounds. And if I go back to the event here and look at the multi-round tournaments, what we're going to be playing is an amateur championship. And what we can see here is I got this multi-round tournament that's going to cover all 3 rounds. It's going to cover all 3 divisions. It is set up as a stroke play event, player versus the field, and it is being played at gross. So we're not really going to worry about net in this particular case. We just want to be able to take and simply record the scores over 3 rounds onto a leaderboard, paper leaderboard. So where we do this is, we're going to start out by going to rounds, and we're going to go to round 1. Doesn't matter which one we're on. We obviously want the scoreboard after round 1. And everything is all set. My pairings are in here. My tournament's been set up that we just looked at. So I can go over here to the report center. Okay. And we'll take a second here to talk to you about the report center. When I go to the report center, there's quite a few pieces to the report center that you should be aware of, because you may not always have to start from scratch. So when you go into the report center, you may have a variety of categories that go down. Now you're looking at the categories at the Carolinas Golf Association. So we have, in addition to basic reports, someone has put together, a series of one-day reports. So they just, store them in the, sort of the 2021 one-day reports filing cabinet here. And Maggie Watts has got her report she likes, and Jason has his, and Interclub has theirs. So they just sort them into categories that they want. So you may not have all these categories, but again, you can create as many as you want in order to store things away. There's also one category at the bottom called this event. And when you use that, that means that whatever report is put into that category is only available to the event you're working on. So if you were to change to another event, that report would not be available to you. If you want a report that you build to be available to any other event that you run, then you got to make sure that you put it up here in basic reports. This basic reports controls, or has in it, reports that are available to all events. So if I click on this basic reports, you can see for us here at the CGA, these are all the reports we've tucked in there that people have tucked in there from time to time. It's getting kind of big at this point. Yours wouldn't be nearly as big. You might have 7 to 10 different reports in there that you like, that you use over and over and over again for many reports. Up top here, we have the button for the community reports. We have a new category which we can, is where you would make a new category down below. And then we have what's called new document. Now, the first thing that we want to do is show you the community reports. In community reports, if you click on that, what has happened is over the course of the last, let's say 4 years at least, the community of Golf Genius users has made reports, and if they feel like their report is pretty cool or very useful or a little bit different than anything else they've seen, they can request that Golf Genius publish it into the community. So therefore, what you see here is 926 reports that are out in the community library that are available for you to, as I always say, steal and use for your own. So you can search through these and look at them visually, but you can also come over here and use the category. So if we were looking for, let's say, cart signs, we wanted to see a variety of different cart signs, I would click on cart signs and it's going to filter it down to just 70 of these reports that match cart signs. And you can see a lot of them look similar, but there's there's a lot of different styles and designs here as I scroll down. You can pick one and say, I just want to run it. If that's the case, if you like the way this over here looks, then what you would just simply do is put your mouse on here and say print, and it would use that card to print your cart signs using your data. On the other hand, if this is something you go, wow, that's pretty close to what I want, but I'd rather have my logo in the upper right-hand corner instead of down below. So what you can do then is steal this report by basically going up here to categories and saying, I'm going to go ahead and take and put that in one of my categories here. And what we're going to do is put this into this event. Okay, so I just click like that, and now it immediately made a copy into the report composer, I'm sorry, the report center in my category called this event. So if I go back up top here and I go back to rounds and I go back to my report center, and I now look at the category called this event, it pops up, there we go. I don't get in here to tip open this event. What you will see in there is, come on, there we go. You'll see a copy of that right here. So the one that I'm flashing on here. Okay, now when I put my mouse over it, not only can I print it, but I can also now edit it or copy it or move it to another category. So now I have control of it. It's in my library, and once it's in my library, I am able to go ahead and edit it. So you can't edit anything in the community library, but you can steal it, put it in your library, and then you'd be able to edit it. So then I would be able to go in and edit this and move that logo to the position I want it to be, but I could leave all the other data the way it was and then run it as if it's my report. If I like this and said, I want this cart sign for all my events, then I would just go in here and change the category to be in basic reports. Oops, sorry, basic reports. And now, not only is it in this event, but if I go back up to basic reports and scroll down, we will see it in here somewhere. Didn't make it yet. Where is it? Let's go back down here. Categories. Oh, it didn't take basic reports. There we go. Now we go back up to basic reports, and there it is right on the bottom, last one in. So that's how you would use the report center. So now the question is, what if you don't find something, or there's so much confusion, I just want to start from scratch? And that's what we're going to teach today. What happens if I just want to start a brand new document? And so we're going to go over here to new document, and you're given a chance to create a new report, a new page, a new spreadsheet, a new scorecard, or a new publisher scoreboard. Publisher scoreboards was the only kind of scoreboards they had early on that were easy to use. We don't use them much anymore because number one, you have to have Microsoft Publisher on your computer, and it requires for you to download a spreadsheet and then marry it up with Publisher. And you don't get a lot of freedom unless you understand quite a bit how to work Publisher. You don't get a lot of freedom to necessarily revise or move things around. You got to be a pretty good Publisher software user to do that. Ever since they created the report composer, which would be this new report, you can make most everything you need in report composer. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and make a new report by clicking on new report, and it's going to bring us to our setup screen. So our setup screen only wants 3 pieces of information. It wants to know, what do you want to name your report? So we're going to call this demo scoreboard for 10, 14. Okay. Wants to know, what size of paper do you want to put it on, or what do you want your printing size to be? So they give you some suggestions here, things that are already built, but you can also manage the layout right here by creating any size document you want. So if I go back to the pull down, you'll see that there's a variety of different letters, letter size, legal size, that type of thing. But there is no reason why, if you have a plotter or an extra large printer, you can see right here, there's a plotter size there of 24 by 36. So you can actually, if you happen to have a plotter at your course, you could put out a very, very large scoreboard that could be seen from more than 20 feet away, if you needed that kind of a look. We do that quite often. We have a plotter here at the CGA, and the tournament directors, when they go out and run our championships, once they have the pairings all set, they put out and produce leaderboards that they take with them to the course, and then use it to keep track of stuff. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do a smaller leaderboard or scoreboard, and we're going to use the US letter landscape. So we want 8.5 by 11, but we want it in landscape mode, so we have a little bit of room to move around. So I'm going to choose this bottom size, 8.5, 11 inches landscape, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in this event, which is right here. So that's where it's going to store it as I design it. So all I do have to do now in the bottom right-hand corner is hit save. And it's going to bring me to what starts to look like something really, really complex. And it takes a little while to get used to what's going on here, but our name of our report's still here. The layout is still here. It gives you a chance to change the layout again if you made a mistake. But what we want to concentrate on here is this content section, okay? And this content section gives you different areas to design. And the one that's standard is there's a report header. If you wanted to create a report header for your report, you would put it into the report header section. And over to the right, we have the ability to design what that section is going to look like. I don't have to use it, but I can use it if I want. Then we have a column header section and the ability to design things that show up at the top of every column. In our particular case here, we're not using columns, so the column header is not going to be used at all. And then it wants to know right here with this area, oops, right here, whoops, highlighting too much here. There we go. What new content do you want after it deals with a column header? And so we click on this little plus sign and we get a choice of printing on our report for every course, division, foursome, each hole, each match play tournament, each pair, each player, each round, or each tee. So it really depends on what you're trying to produce. Now we're trying to produce a scoreboard. So we want to be able to break that scoreboard down not only by teams or by individuals, excuse me, but also what division they're in. So you have to take your time here to figure out logically, what is it that I want to see in this report before you get too deep, because if you choose the wrong sequence of categories here and go back to change it, you end up throwing away the stuff you've done so far. So it's important to get this sequence correct. So once again, in our particular scoreboard, I want things divided by division and then by player. So I really only have two sortations I have to do. First division, then player. If this was a team event, I might have to do division, then teams, and then players within the teams in order to get the data to the level that I wanted it. So it gives you a lot of options here depending on how you've created your event. What we want to do is we want to start with a category called division. I want to be able to put some division information onto my page. After that, what do I want to do next? Well, next I click on the plus sign for another content area that is below division. And here it already knows that after division, the only thing I've got available is either course information, which I don't care about, or player information, which is exactly what I want. I want players' names and stuff to be able to put on my leaderboard, my scoreboard. So we've got a division section followed by a player section, and you'll see how this works as I start to build it. Okay, Over to the right, I have design capabilities, sortation capability, filters, and whether or not I want page breaks on all of these two sections. So for a typical scoreboard, let's go in and build our division header. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to the design tool. I'm going to click on the word design, and it's going to bring me up here to what we call the design center for this section. And I've got two sections here. I've got the actual amount of space. You can see I'm dragging and pulling this up and down. There's a little gray box there that says drag to resize vertically. I click my mouse in there and I can make this section as big or as small as I want. Obviously, what you're seeing across from left to right is 11 inches of design space. And as I pull it up and down, the maximum I'm going to have is 8.5 inches. But if I do 8.5 inches for my division header, I won't have any room left for my player information. So I really just want to make this header just slightly, big enough to handle what I want to do here. So what do I want in my division header? Well, it's certainly like the name of the division. So let's go find and pick up a data token that is going to print in there the division title. So I'm going to add text or field here. And the only thing it's offering me, because it knows it's the division section, is the division name. Well, that's pretty simple. So I click on the division name here. It moves it over into the styling window. I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to center it on the page. I'm going to make it much bigger. I probably want this to be 48. I want it to be bold. And let's even give it a color. Let's give it a nice bright blue here, royal blue. Okay, so that's kind of what that's going to look like. It should be big enough, so we'll see. So I'm going to apply that style, and it brings it back and puts it on my design window. So now what I can do is I'm going to take and drag this over to the right. There's a little X, a little box in the upper right, so that I cover from left to right. And this thing, because I said I wanted it centered in the field, I'm guaranteeing that my title is centered. Now I can click on this, I can move it up and down anywhere I want, or I can use arrows. I can go up and down one arrow at a time, depending on how I want to do that. The second thing I'd like to be able to do is go ahead and put a logo in here and to make it really look good. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to add a photo from an album. So I'm going to click on photo from album. This is stuff that's already been loaded for me. And I'm going to go to our logos page, our logos album. And I'm just going to pick up the Carolinas Golf Association logo right here. I guess that's in there multiple times. That's fine. And so it goes ahead and inserts it right here for me. And I don't want that to be right on the edge of the paper. So I'm going to pull it over just a little bit. And then in order to balance it out, I'd like to have that same logo over here to the right. Well, rather than go to photo from album, I have to go find it again. I have a nice little button down here called duplicate. So as long as this one is highlighted, I can hit duplicate and I get a second one. And so very quickly, saving myself time and effort, I can grab the second logo and put it over there. So that looks pretty good right now. With our report preview, we can see what this stuff looks like. If I can get rid of this thing down below. And so I'm going to refresh the preview, and it gives me an opportunity to take a look at that. And there we go. That's what my header is going to look like in terms of the division header on the page. So I've got all the rest of this space down here to work with in order to put my players in there. That header is just fine. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So what I can go ahead and is save the division header section. Now, we've talked about the fact that I'm not going to use the report header. There's no reason to have a report on top, although I could at the top of the report, put the name of the club or something like that, but it's not generally necessary in a scoreboard. But I do want to go into the design header, and I'll show you why. I'm going to go in and design the report header, because right now, whether we like it or not, it's already been allocated in about 1/8 of an inch of space. I want that space back. I don't want to waste that at the top, so I'm going to go ahead and close this up. Well, I guess that's as minimum as I can. Okay, never mind. You just have to double check that you're at the minimum amount. I think the column header is one that also was a problem. So just make sure you're not using space for blank anywhere. So the report header was using some space, and the column header also might be using some space. You want to make sure that that's minimized. You can see I can take that column header and take it down to nothing, so I get all the paper back that I want. So I'm using the maximum amount of the 8.5 by 11. Okay, so we've got our division information right here all set so far. I'll show you some more stuff in a few minutes. Now we want to start to plug in the player information. And this is going to do it player by player. So we're going to go in and design this section. And what you hopefully have realized at this point is I have an awful lot of paper to work with. Now I have to decide at this point, how many people's information do I want per sheet of paper? If I go and pull this section open all the way, then whatever I put in here is going to repeat once because I'm using the balance of the paper for one player. If I kind of make this halfway, I might be able to get 2 players' information in there. If I make it a little smaller, I might be able to get 3 or 4, and a smaller and smaller and smaller. It will repeat this space here, this physical space, as often on the page it can until it runs out of paper. So this is the part that will repeat over and over and over again on the paper till you run out of paper. And then it'll go to the next page and start repeating it more until it runs out of paper. Our case, for a scoreboard, I need it to be fairly big. We want this scoreboard to be able to be seen from across the room, or people don't have to be 15 inches away. So I'm going to try to put 2 players' names on each page. Okay, so I'm going to pull that down to what I assume visually is kind of half a page. And so what do I want in here? Well, I certainly want the player's name, and I'm going to need some boxes. We have 3 rounds, so I could put 3 boxes to record the score for each round, but that's not really practical. What I really want to be able to do is I want to put basically 5 boxes. I want to put round 1, round 2, the total of round 1 and 2, so we can look at who's really ahead. I want to put a box for round 3 individual score, and then I want a total score of rounds 1, 2, and 3. So as I mentally start to put through here, I know that I need 5 boxes somewhere over here on the right, and I'm going to need a player's name maybe over here to the left. So what I typically do is I try to fit my boxes in first because that will dictate how big a name I can put in because I have to have enough room for all my boxes. So let's put some boxes in. Over here to the right, I do have a button that says Add Rectangle. When I click on that, it brings the rectangle into the page. I have handles on each of the 4 corners that allows me to take and drag this box as big as I want, up, down, narrow, however I want to size the box. So I'm going to create the box, let's see, about that. Again, I have to visually decide what I'm going to do here. And then over to the left, it has a solid border, but if I want that to be a little more substantial, I can also, the width of the border is now 1. I'm going to make it 2. I'm going to make it just a little thicker so it stands out. I could also give it a color, which we will in a second for a different situation. So now what I'm going to do is tuck this guy right about, let's say here. Okay. And then I'm going to need, this would be round 1 box. I'm going to need a round 2 box. So I'm going to duplicate it. I don't need to size it again. I want all my boxes to be exactly the same size. And so we're going to pull this over and align it. You can see the alignment tools here help me align this just the way that I want. I'm also going to need a round 3 score. So we're going to duplicate it again and put a round 3 score down here. I'm going to need a box for rounds 1 and 2 added together. So let's duplicate that again. Duplicate. And because rounds 1 and 2 added together are going to be a little bit more probably likely to be a 3-digit number, I'm going to make this box just a little bit wider. Okay. Oops, sorry. And get it perfectly aligned like that. And I'm also going to need my grand total box, but I want that one to be wider too, because that's likely to have 3 digits, 3 rounds added together. Something going to be in the 200 range more than likely, or the low 200s. So we'll duplicate that one more time, the bigger box, and we'll tuck that down over here. So now I can clean these up a little bit. I'm going to click on this box and hold down my shift key and click on that box. And I'm going to move them a little closer because I want plenty of room for big names. And I'm going to take my round one and move it over here so that it is proportional, just like that. And because the totals are a little bit different, I'm going to go back to this box, and you know what? Just for ha-has, I'm going to take and make the border color here green and the border color here on this one green, just to signify that those are total boxes as opposed to individual rounds boxes. All right, so now we got to work on the name. Somehow we have to get the name into this page, and I'm going to tuck these things a little more. I want a little more room for my name. This really is an exercise in trying to make things fit. All righty, so now it's time to put the names in. Now, we're not going to type the name in. We're going to let the computer substitute a name in through a data token so that every time it produces this, it produces one name, then the next name, then the next name in this section, and it keeps repeating these sections so it's done with the names. So we're going to go up here and add a text data field again. When I do that, you can see if you attended the scorecard one, you can see I've got player related information. I got custom fields for the player. I have round related data as to where they're playing, what hole they're starting on, tee times. I can put a variety of information on the course here. Tee related information, yardage for the tees. I mean, there's just tons of information you can put on here if you want to really take and put this really quite complex. I got round related information as to the round dates, the round GGID codes, et cetera, et cetera. You can put a lot of data on here. All we really want is a simple, very simple scoreboard here. So I could choose to put just their name. So I can say handle, and it puts their name over here. And now we can make this much bigger. So let's see if 36 or 48 will fit. And we're going to change that font to an Alamandra to give it a little look like a calligraphy. And we'll just go ahead and apply that text change. So now I've got the player's name here, and I can move it around and center it. I want to center it on the boxes. I want to pull the box open so there's enough room for the whole name. So now let's take a look and see what that would have done. I'm going to go down and get the preview. So you can see that's what I've got so far. I've got Andy Younce, and then I have a second person, Bob Yao. So I am getting 2 players per page. If I only saw one, that meant that I allocated too much space to player one, and I'd have to tuck this up a little bit in order to get enough space for 2 players to fit on the page. Looks good. I can certainly go back and bold this name so it stands out a little more. If that's the case, I go back and double click the name, highlight it, and then just hit bold, and that will make it, and then apply the text change. Then we'll go down and hit the preview again, and now their name is a little more substantial and perhaps easier to read. Now, I probably could make this a little bit bigger, but I'm only seeing 2 names. I might have some very, very long names in the event. And so I have to be careful that I'm not necessarily designing for a short name like Bob Yao, and then all of a sudden all the long names are crashing into the boxes. So you have to kind of be a little bit aware of what names you have in your event to know how you can design the page. Now, that looks fine the way that is. But I want to show you another technique that can really sparkle and really help your scoreboards quite a bit. And I'm going to stop the share here for a second. And I just want to turn on the chat window. So as we go along, now that we're getting into this a little deeper, if you have any questions at all, please open the chat window and type them in, and I'll be happy to try to answer them as you go. So you can open the chat window and type in your questions. So what we're going to do is go back and fancy up this name a little bit, just show you what kind of power this this particular program has. So I'm going to take this name right here. I'm going to highlight it. You can see it's all selected at this point. It's got kind of a gold band around it. It's kind of hard for you to see, I'm sure, but it's selected and has a little square in the upper right. I'm just going to delete it. Okay, and we're going to start again. I'm going to go up here and get a new text field, And under player related data, you can see not only do I have their handle, which is the combination of their first and last name, I can pull out just their first name, just their first initial, just their last name, just their last initial, and the remainder of their last name. So if we really wanted to make a nice fancy scoreboard here, what we're going to do is we're going to go first select the last name initial. So when I click on that, it's going to bring a data field over here, last name initial. And then right behind that, what I want is the last name remainder, the remainder of their last name minus the initial. And so I'm going to click on that. And so that's in my design window over here to the right. And if I slide back between the percent sign here and the percent sign there, that you can see it's last name initial. We're going to style that differently than the rest of the name. So I'm going to make this a 72 point. I'm going to bold it and I'm going to give it a color. I'm going to make it a bright red. And we're going to make the font Almendra, so it looks like, again, calligraphy. And then to the right, I'm going to take and style the last name is only going to be 48 point Almendra, bold, but we're going to leave it as black. So now if I take and apply that text change, that's how the name comes in here, like that. And now if we look at the preview, you'll see their last name. Now, like what you see there, Younce and Yao, with the capital letter of their last name being much bigger and the color. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do is I might have some long names, but I got a lot of white space over here. So what we're going to go back is even change this some more. I'm going to double click on this. And right now, if I highlight the last name initial, okay, just a little more advanced, 72 is as big a font size as it offers me by pull down box. However, I can go in here and look at the source data behind here. This is the HTML. If I click on source, you'll see where it specifies right over here. If I can make that a little bit bigger, let's see. There you go. It specifies right here 72 point. Well, you know what I can do is I can go ahead and change that by typing. Let's make that 120 points. And then let's make the last name 72. So I can change it by pull down, or I can change those particular numbers. The rest of this stuff, just don't mess with any of the other styling. And when I come back out, now it's much bigger. I can apply the text change, and I'm going to make it smaller again, my screen smaller again. And now we're going to look at the preview. And that's a much better representation of the two names there. So I'm going to just tuck this up a little bit like that. Now, I have, as luck would have it, I have a bunch of people with the same last name. So it's going to be important for us to figure out who's who by being able to put their first name in there. So we will do that as well. And all we have to do is go back up here, add the text field. All I want is their first name. We're going to style that. So I highlight the first name. We're going to leave that as Arial. We're going to make that probably something in the neighborhood of, might even be able to handle 36. We'll make it bold and we'll leave that black. Okay. So now I can apply that name. Here's my field for first name, and we're going to tuck that first name right under and offset a little bit from their last name. So now how does that look? Well, we're going to preview that. And now we know that this is Andy Younce, and it looks like I've got some space. So I'm going to go up here with number 4, highlight their first name. If you want to know what number 4 is, just put your mouse on it. It tells you that's what that field is, first name. And I'm just going to tuck it up a little bit. It doesn't need to be quite that low. And now refresh. And that looks pretty good. And you'll see down below that Bob's name is right behind his. So it can be pretty fancy. What else do we want to do to make this scoreboard look good and organized? Well, in order to make sure everybody doesn't confuse Bob's scores as Andy's scores, let's go ahead and take and put a rule in here so that we can separate the two areas. So I have the ability to put lines. So here's an option called add line. So I'm going to add the line. It puts this little line right up here. You can see the little cross. I can click on that cross and I can drag that little line segment anywhere I want. I'm going to drag it down near the bottom of the section. I'm going to take and make it all as wide as the whole section. So I'm taking the right-hand box and dragging it over to the right. Then I want this line color to be black is fine, but I want it to be a dashed line. And I want that width to be maybe 3. So there's a distinct difference there. And then one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck it as low as I can, and I'm going to take my arrows and move it down. So it's right near the bottom of the box that contains the first player. Now let's take a look at what my preview looks like. If I look at my preview, now I've got a line below Andy and below Bob, and that sort of makes a very nice presentation, makes it easy for everybody to follow who's in what category. Now, we start putting scores in, but it's going to get a little confusing. So let's put some labels on these boxes so everybody knows what box means what. So what you've seen so far is I've either drawn lines or drawn boxes, or I brought in data tokens. But one of the nice things about the report composer is I can also just type text anywhere I want. So I'm going to go up here and add text field again, okay? But in this case, instead of choosing a data token from the right, I'm just going to put my cursor in here and type in some text, round 1. Now that's too big, so I want to make this so that it sits right on top of the box. So the Arial font is good, but this probably needs to be something more like 20. And we'll see in a second, and I'll bold it, and I want to center it. You'll see why in a second. And then we'll apply the text change. So now you can see over here in my design window, I have the words round 1. Perfect. And so I can take this round 1, left align it, and drag it open just enough to match the whole box, and my word round 1 is sitting perfectly centered over round 1 box. Now, from my standpoint, that's a little too big. I don't need it quite that big, so I'm going to double click that to edit the field. Double click. There we go. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm just going to move it down to 18 point. I don't want it to be too overwhelming on the page. And now you can see that it's sitting there a little bit more, not quite so bad. And then I can move it up and down and tuck it right on top of the box. Now I can do that again for rounds 2 and round 3 and the other labels, but I don't want to have to start from scratch, okay? Because I just styled this, and I want the style of all the other ones to be exactly the same. And so rather than go in and type the words round 2 and then remember how I styled this, what size, what font, everything else. The beauty is I can take and duplicate this. It's highlighted now. I'm going to duplicate it. I get another round 1 box, which I can tuck right over here. Okay. I center it, move it down so it matches. But now I double click this, and all I have to do is change the 1 to a 2, save my text change, and now it says 2, but it's styled exactly like round 1. Okay. And what I can see here is I just need to tuck that down a little bit, like that, to be in the same line as round 2. So we're going to duplicate that again. We're going to drag it down here to round 3. Okay. And move my arrows around to get just where I want. I'm going to double click it. Double click it without moving it. And we're going to change it to round 3 and apply the text change. Now I've got round 3. We're getting a little crowded here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on round 1, hold down my shift key, this box, round 2, this box. I'm going to use my arrows to move them up out of the way a little bit. I just don't need it to be quite that crowded so that it looks a little clearer. Okay, I still want the same style, so I'm going to take and highlight round 2. Let's duplicate that. Here it is here. We're going to bring it over here and center it on this box. And we're going to rename that. I'm going to need to rename that total 1 and 2. Apply the text change, and that's what that box represents. And then one more time, I'm going to duplicate that box, drag it down here, give a label to this bottom box. I'm going to take it, center it, move it, oops, move it down so it's in agreement with round 3. We're going to double click it, and we're going to change that title to championship. It's going to be a little bit too long, so we are going to have to highlight that and probably take it down to 16 so it fits over the box, and we say apply. And there you see where the championship word now fits. One thing I didn't do there was I didn't make it black. It's kind of a gray color, so I'm going to go back. Whoops. I'm going to go back, highlight it, and make sure that it is solid black, and apply the text change. And in fact, I think all of those are a little bit gray, but not a big deal. All right, so let's look at our preview again. We're going to go down and look at the preview. And now we got a pretty good looking scoreboard. Okay, got a little bit extra paper at the bottom here. What it allows me to do, again, if you just wanted to fuss, is I can make this section a little bit bigger. I can take and select everything. Oops. I can drag and drag through everything, pick up all the pieces, and just move them all down a little bit, like that. And now I can refresh my preview and see that we're still stretched out just a little bit better. Looks nicer on the page. I got a little more margin up top. I've got Andy's name and Bob's name. They both look like they ought to go up a little bit. So we're going to take this guy here, the name and the first name. We're going to move them together so that they don't separate. I'm going to move them up a little bit so they're more centered in the box or in the space. So you can fuss to your heart's content. And now let's save the whole design. Okay, now the design is saved. Let's go ahead and run the report. Okay, so we'll run the report and see what it looks like. It's telling me that I have divisions in there, and just warning me that if I don't have divisions in my event, then the divisions won't show up on the page. So this is going to produce a PDF, and I'll show you that. We'll talk about a few of the things that now you can do that are even more advanced, just so you're aware that they are part of this system here. Okay, so we're going to show the PDF. I'm going to stop my screen share here and start the screen share again with the So you should be seeing the scoreboard now. Let me look. Whoops, hold on a second. Let's try that again. There you go. So it looks pretty good, but you see up top here, I don't know if you can see it or not, I have 49 pages. That would be 98 golfers. I only have 48 or 90, yeah, 98. Well, the reason is you can see that I have all golfers division, and I have all these players in the all golfers division as I scroll down. Okay. And then I will come up in just a second here to the men's amateur division, and then I'm duplicating people. Then I have the senior amateur division, and then finally I have the women's division. Now, I could go ahead and just print the pieces that I want, but we're going to use the tools to only produce the divisions that we want. Okay, that's number one. Number two is, as I go through here, you can see that the women's amateur division starts with a person with the last name of Z, then goes to Y, and then goes YA to YU, but then back to Z to ZR. So we're kind of out of alphabetical order. It might be difficult for people to find their names if we're not in some kind of alphabetical order within each division. All right, so let's stop the share and go back to our page. And so let's take care of those situations there. You may have also noticed as we went through that there was a name Zimmerman in there that was a little too big and was crashing into the boxes. So what we're going to do is go down to this event, find my go down to this event, there we go, and find my scoreboard for today, which is for 10/14, and we're going to edit this. Okay, so we got to fix a few things. First thing we're going to do is let's go fix that long name. So we're going to go back into the design for the player site, okay, here. We're going to go back and highlight the player's first initial and last name. We're going to double click it to get into the design window. We're going to go back to that source data, and we determined that 120 is too big. So let's make this 108. Okay. And now let's apply the text change. So next time we see that I'm sorry, wrong thing, my mistake. The 120 was okay. It was the 72 that needed to be more like probably 66. Apply the text change, just make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so that'll take care of the long names. All right, next up is we got to get the names into alphabetical order. So I'm going to save this design section, and we're going to go back to the original instructions here. And you can see that I had my design, but I also have this sort button. So let's go ahead and sort the player information in alphabetical order. So we're going to sort this, and we're going to sort it by, when it comes up, it wants to know what field do you want to sort it by. Well, the fields that I'm using are last name initial, last name remainder, and first name. Okay, but I can also pick any other field that's available. So I want this to be sorted first by last name and then by first name within the last name. So we're going to start out with last name. So I click on last name, that's the field, and it wants me to do it in either ascending order or descending order. And I can say go. Now I can add another sort field. And the other sort field I'm going to do is the first name. I have a lot of people in this event named Young. So yes, all the Youngs will be together, but I want them in alphabetical order by first name. So we're going to choose first name here. We're also going to make that ascending and say go. So what we've done here is we said we're going to sort players' names first by last name. And then when there's a tie with the last name, we're going to sort it by first name. That'll take care of the sortation for us. And what you will see when I go down to the preview, you'll see that Hardesty as an H has jumped in front of Peters with a P. And those guys we were dealing with before, Younts and Yao, aren't even on the first page anymore because their Y's and H's and P's come sooner. Okay. Now we dealt with the sorting of the players' names, but we also have to sort and filter the division names. So we're going to go back up to this division section, and we're going to use a filter. The filter is the ability for you to be able to specify what you want to include or what you want to exclude. So in this particular case, we want to add a rule, okay, a filtering rule. And a filtering rule is we're going to add a field where we want to filter on the division name. Okay, we want to decide which names we want to include and which division names we don't want to include. And so it comes up and says division name contains, begins with, or ends with. So we're going to say contains. We want to have the one that contains the word men's. Okay, but if we leave this filter just like this, then we're only going to get the men's division. So we're going to add another rule. Okay, division name contains senior. If we left it like this, we would only get men's or senior. And in fact, what we would have is, this is, going back to algebra. If you ever asked yourself when you were going to use algebra and data sets, now's the time. we are looking at a filter that says we want a division name that contains men's, and this, at the same time, the division name has to include senior. Well, we don't have any division names that include both those words. So we're going to change this button to or. So now our filter says, give me any division names that contains men's and any division name that contains seniors. And we're going to have one more rule, any division name that contains women's. Okay, so men's or seniors or women's are included in the report. If it doesn't have the word men's, if it doesn't have the word senior, and it doesn't have the word women's, we don't want it in our report. That's what the filtering does. So we go ahead and save this filter. And what you will see in our preview here is it has gone away. It has eliminated the all golfers division. It's no longer there because we didn't ask for anything that had the word all or the word golfers in it. We just wanted things that had men's, senior, or women's. I could have also made one filter, by the way, for those you sharp-eyed folks. I could have made one filter that said contains the word amateur. That still would have worked as well. Okay, so there's lots of ways to skin a cat here. So let's go ahead and save this, or we can, I guess, at this point, run this report. We'll run it one more time and show you the results here. We'll download the PDF. Stop my share, start a new share. And now what you'll see here is we start with the men's amateur division. We've got this division starting with YB going to YO. We got Yorks, but Aaron York comes before James York. Caden Young becomes before Ernest Young, becomes before John Young. So obviously our sortation is working. And as I go through, we're good. You can see I just barely got Zimmerman in there. I could go back one more time and take that type size of 66 and maybe move it down to 60. And that would give us a little space. Or I could take and make the boxes smaller. I can move it around a little bit. You will see that it is sort of hit or miss. Now I got an automatic page break there, and now my next section, senior amateur, starts. H becomes before Y, and all the Yorks and Youngs there are in alphabetical order. And then we get to the Z's, and then we're going to go to the women's amateur. P becomes before Y, Y's become before Z, and everything has worked out just fine here. So in this particular case, the pages have worked out just the way I filtered for only the divisions I wanted, and I have my players in alphabetical order. That's good news. Stop the share and go back to our system. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to show you that you could add to a scoreboard if you wanted to. I'm going to go back down to this event. Go back in and edit our 1014 right here. And we're going to go back into the player section and design that. While we're here, I'll fix the Zimmerman. So we're going to go in here and double click on the names. I'm going to go to source, and we're going to take Zimmerman down to 60, and that should do the trick. And we will say save. What I want to do now is just show you one other technique that you can put in here. We're going to add a picture again. We're going to add another logo. And so I'm going to upload a photo from the album. So we'll click here. I'm going to go into my logo album. And we're going to pick out a sort of a monotone, monocolor logo here. Why don't we pick out this CCH 1922. So we're going to pick this picture up, and you can see that it takes and puts that picture right here into my document. But there's two things that I want to be able to do here. I want to make this as a watermark, sort of filling in some of the space between the name and the boxes. So I need it to be light, and I need to be able to put it behind everything else. You can see right now that it's blocking anything that it sits in front of. So I have tools to my left that allow me to do that. One is, once I put the picture in, I have this photo transparency option over here to the left. Okay, all that is a slider. So if you watch the logo, as I slide this to the left, the logo would get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter till I want to make it just like a ghosted image there. It's still blocking stuff in front, it's just blocking it very lightly. So the other thing that I have over to the left here is I have the ability to send an item to the back of the page or bring it to the front. In this particular case, I'd like that ghosted image to go all the way behind everything else. So I'm going to click send the back. If you watch the round one, you will see that this gray portion of round will become darker once I put the logo behind. So I'm going to hit send to back, and now the box is clear and we can write into it. Now these boxes are filled with white right now, so our best bet would be to highlight them. Highlight them. I'm going to hold down my shift key and grab all 5 boxes, and then, oops, it's not going to let me do that, sorry. Round one, I'm going to come over here, and in the background color, I'm going to move it to an X, meaning no color. And then when I'm done with that, you can see that now the box has no white in it, so it does allow the watermark to shine through. The other boxes can stay white because the watermark's not behind them. So this is a little bit of graphic arts, but it does give you just a picture of, all the stuff you can do, in order to make this. And I might want to take this logo and just move it down. Whoops, wrong one. Move it down a little bit so it looks a little more centered. And we look at the preview. And now you get an opportunity to brand yourself. That still looks a little dark. So I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to come over here and make the transparency even less. So it really is just slightly ghosted in there. And then refresh it one more time. It's a little bit lighter. We save it, and we do our final print, and our report is done. So to recap here, I went through a lot of stuff, showed you a lot of different techniques. You don't have to use them all. Depends on how much time you have and how much patience you have to tweak and move and tweak and move. It is a situation where you need to do things like that. However, I'm experienced at it right now. I will give you one very, very important tip. If you're going to go in and make a report of any type, what I would do first, and I do this when I'm starting a report, I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go, is I put the data fields in, but I don't worry about styling them yet. I just put the names in, I put the boxes, and I run a preview, all right, to make sure that everything's turning out the way I want before I spend all that time styling. Because if you have to make a major change by inserting another category or whatever you might have to do, you will have to end up throwing away all your work to do that. Now, Golf Genius is working on letting you insert a category without throwing away your styling, but it doesn't do that right now. So you could spend the better part of a half an hour or 45 minutes styling it, and then you go to run it and go, oh man, I need to do this by team, by player. Once you decide to change that category sequence, you will lose all of your styling and all of your data. That's a lot of effort that went away. So just put the basics in there. Don't care what it looks like. Just make sure that your report is logically coming out the way you want. And if your report logically produces, then you can go back in and style it and make it look pretty the way that you want to do it on the long run. Okay. Let's download the PDF. Stop the share, start it, and show it to you. And that is what the final result looks like with the watermark, with the names. If I go down here to our people, Zimmerman, you can see Zimmerman fits in there very nicely now. And everything is just the way we want it to be. The good news is that this would work for and could stay in your library and work for any individual event with 5 rounds or 3 rounds broken by division. So it's not like you have to design this every time. So if I had teams, or I had different division names, I would just have to come in and just filter for those names, and I would be ready to go. If I had to do teams, you'd have to create a brand new report for teams, because this one is set up for individuals as opposed to teams. But once you have it, it's there forever, and you can use it over and over and over again. All right, we've reached close to the end of time. Are there any questions? I know this was a very detailed course today, but again, my objective here is to show you what's possible. You can go into the help button and click on Report Composer, or I'm sorry, type in the word Report Composer, and it will show you a variety of different tutorials that will help you figure out what all the tools do. But the key element here is figure out your structure first, then go in and style, and use all the buttons on the left to style how you wish. Boxes, lines, type, names, data fields, colors, font sizes, font type, all that stuff is available for you, and you can put it anywhere on the page you want to make either a really ugly report or a really pretty report, depending on how you want it to look and how much effort you want to put into it. So if you have any questions, you can open up your mic and ask them, or type them into the chat window. I'll be happy to answer anything you might have. If not, I would say goodbye to everybody, and I appreciate you tuning in. This will be available recorded, and we'll be putting this out in YouTube in about a week and a half or so. And I'll email everybody the link so that you can share with other people or review it again yourself if you wish.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Kim. Appreciate it. All right. We'll see you all later. Bye.